everyone else.
Yeah. Hello and welcome everybody to the Cross Ice feed. It is Stanley Cup Finals time, and yeah, we're kind of late to the party, but Game 1 has come and gone, and boy, what a thriller that was for those of us that actually stayed up and watched it. Let me see. Counting between everybody in this room, I think I was the only one that did stay up and watch it.
Some of us had to work and can't work from home.
Hey, listen, come on, easy.
I don't work in an air-conditioned office.
I know, you work out in a tent.
Or in your underpants like this guy does.
Hey, leave me alone. Well, triple overtime was the way it had to be settled in Game 1, and it was a fun Game 1 to watch. That was the most entertaining overtime, sets of overtimes I've seen in a long time. 5th longest overtime game in Stanley Cup Final history. And guess what? Shrems, you and I were both wrong on predicting who would be going to the Stanley Cup Finals. Rob, you were non-committal to a lot of things.
I had Chicago right.
That's my life.
Yeah, and let's see. Phil... Yeah, Phil was way off, too. I think he had it pretty much pegged at, Chicago and Pittsburgh, or L.A. and Pittsburgh as well. And Dave, you were just so, I don't know. But we'll get to you in a little bit. But Game 1, going back, we're talking Game 1. It was a very goalie-oriented Stanley Cup Final. And it was, as we have people leaving here at the party, thank you for coming. Game 1, I didn't see it going that way. 3-1 Boston into the third period, and then next thing you know, Chicago mounts a huge comeback. And Andrew Shaw, a guy who I discredited in the last podcast, if you remember correctly here, that I just really didn't see much coming out of him, except for his physical presence out there on the ice, and he gets the game-winning goal.
Surprise to me. Chicago was a little bit more well-balanced than Boston. I like Boston as a more well-balanced team than Chicago. I don't know what they have. They have two scoring lines, a grinder line, and then a goon line, if you will.
Yeah.
I like that. I feel more confident in that in the Stanley Cup team.
But you gave more credit to Tuukka Rask than you did to Corey Crawford.
I've been doing that all season. I'm not a Crawford believer. I refuse to give him the credit he deserves.
I think I join you in that too.
There's something about him that I just don't like. Rask, yes.
And I've actually not had the time to really check this out because thank God for Game Center, because it's the only reason I actually got to see the nice game recap feature on that. 11 minutes for the whole game. Perfect.
That's all you need to see, right? Let's condense 2 hockey games into 11 minutes.
Exactly. But as I remember it, at least 2, if not all 3 goals went high glove side on Crawford.
Yes, they did.
And I just don't think his movement's all that great, and I think Rask played better. But when you saw the overtimes, Boston had everything, and then just the fluke, double tip.
Yeah, it was a good back and forth overtime between both sides. They both had their chances, but then what really surprised me was, just the penalties that came out towards the end of the game. And let's see, Boston had 2 chances in overtime, and the parts that got me about those penalties was that they were both for too many men on the ice. Now, that was a discipline issue if I've ever seen one. Having too many men on the ice in the first overtime, too many men in the second overtime. How did Boston not seal the deal with those 2 penalties?
It's a gift. It really is. And it's one of those things where you don't really, if you're a referee, you have to call too many men. I mean, it's not one of those judgment calls that you can kind of let go for now.
And they played the puck on both times, too.
It was a mistake. It clearly was a mistake.
I don't know. They allowed the too many men in Pittsburgh back in, 2000?
We'll get to Phil in a minute here, but hey, Rob, really quickly, your Kings are out in 5 games, going to the Stanley Cup Final. Being defending Stanley Cup champions, they came this far again to the Western Conference Finals. Where do you see this team going next year, and do they make any moves in the offseason to better themselves? Because, you guys, you have a great team. You really do, through and through. Kyle Clifford was one guy that shined throughout, and Dustin Penner, too, out of nowhere. Oh, Shrem's going to say something.
Yes.
L.A., where do you think they're going there, Rob, real quickly?
You're not allowed to just make fun of Penner the whole time.
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
I'm going to interject with something different. Because it's a shortened season, do you feel as though you need to make changes? Is this just one of those asterisk seasons where you just
Better question, yeah.
I like that. No, I felt like Quick didn't really play all that well during the shortened season. He's kind of mediocre, whatever. He still played better than a lot of goaltenders in the league, but he didn't play like he could, basically what it was. I wouldn't really change much of anything other than just trying to get the guys healthy. I was actually, and one of the reasons I actually said this earlier with you guys was why I didn't make a prediction last time we did the podcast was because as much as I really thought Chicago was going to win, I didn't want them to. And I couldn't bring myself to actually say that, like, yeah, I think Chicago's going to win. But no, my Kings are my team. I really didn't want to say anybody was going to beat them, even though they still played like crap.
There's not much to change out there. They have everything. They need to trade Bernier and get something for him while he's still valuable.
I think so. Yeah, that's a good play. I mean, he's a great backup goaltender, and I would hate to see him go, but I think we can find a younger backup goaltender to take his place. That would be great. Bernier's had very, very few bad games with the Kings. I think he got pulled once in the shortened season.
Is Jeff Zatkoff still in the season in the system, or has he moved on to greener pastures?
That is something I would have to check on. Actually, I'm not sure.
I want to say he went to
season,
Pittsburgh.
You don't see much
Maybe
of any.
He went to Pittsburgh.
I think he did.
You don't see much in the lower levels in the 48-game season.
Well, you don't need goaltending at the lower level. You don't need to concern yourself with that right now.
I will say the one note I really do want to make for the shortened season and even into the playoffs, the one big player that I loved picking up in the shortened season was Tyler Toffoli. Great young kid, had a few goals in the season, had a couple goals in the playoffs too, and was really a big pickup to bring up from Manchester.
And you have Tyler Toffoli for the next 3 years, but the one question on my mind is, out of all the restricted free agents, who do you keep? And you have two unrestricted free agents in the mix here. The restricted free agency is going to be really heavy with LA here with Kyle Clifford, Trevor Lewis, Jordan Nolan, and let's see, Slava Voinov, I think, is a huge one that you have to sign. Alec Martinez.
They'll sign all four of those, not Martinez.
Well, he's not so much him. But then you got Keaton Ellerby, Jake Muzzin, who I think he's going to be remembered as the guy who got tossed into the bench by Chicago. And Jonathan Bernier, of course, is a restricted.
I could see Martinez and Muzzin going.
Yeah.
And maybe picking up another young defenseman, and then maybe Bernier going. The rest of them will get signed, I think. Voinov, they'd be idiots for not signing Voinov.
They're not big names, but they're important names.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing about the Kings is, like, I mean, last year, with the exceptions of, Carter and Richards, nobody was a big name.
Yeah, speaking of...
maybe Doughty.
Speaking of other things here, we got our unrestricted free agents, and these are three ones that are kind of mystery men to me. Brad Richardson, I've always kind of been partial to him as a good, finisher on the third, fourth line. I used to pick him up in fantasy all the time because he got those, those mysterious points that came out of nowhere. Yeah, and I mean he had a hat trick once in a while, and he did the job. But
you don't even notice he's had 2 points in the last, last game, and all of a sudden you got 6 more points, and you're like,
yeah, I don't know where I got those fantasy points from, but apparently it came from Richardson. But Dustin Penner and Rob Scuderi are the other two. And we got our Pittsburgh resident expert in here, and he might want to get Rob Scuderi back for next year.
I do thank you for Scuderi for the last 2 years.
Yeah, but that team needs a little help.
And as I threw it in a few Pittsburghers' faces, they were like, "Yeah, you can have him, whatever." And then we won the cup, so it was just okay.
Yeah. All right. So LA not making too many changes. All right. Okay, I'm getting dirty looks here. Dirty looks, really dirty looks. All right, moving on here.
All right, they went away. We're good.
All right, they're gone. All right, let's move on into the Pittsburgh realm here. So LA rounding things out. Pittsburgh. All right, so your general manager wins GM of the year. Okay, all right, it's a 48-game season. All right,
and in the same week goes out and signs the second best player in the league for $9 million.
It's like around 9.8, I think, a year.
Yeah, close to 10. Yep. So and don't forget, he gave Bilesma a 2-year extension too.
He also gave.
It's been a busy week for a losing team.
Yeah. Well, here, and I think this is what his idea was. Because once Pittsburgh got swept by Boston, which no one predicted,
right?
No one. A lot of people. Okay, well,
I did.
You said Boston was going to win. I think you said 4-1. If I remember, I'm not sure, but everyone was calling for Bilesma's job,
right?
And so I think Shera came out and to give the extension to all of the coaches. All 3 coaches got 2 years extensions on their contracts. That's showing that he still has faith in those coaches, which some people don't. He also came out and said that Fleury is still going to be his number 1 next year.
That's ballsy.
It is ballsy. And Bilesma was still saying that they're going to stick with Fleury. He's young. The problem with Fleury is that I think if he has another bad year, he's gone. Shera said that they had a conversation, and how he needs to really step it up a notch.
Yeah. We're debating ages here. Who?
Fleury's 28.
Fleury's 28.
28.
I thought he was my age. Yeah. A year older than me?
Yeah, he might be just turned 28, I think.
Okay. He's going to say one thing.
I'm getting really sick of these, oh my gosh, you haven't won the cup, we're going to fire the coach bullshit.
You're going to the extent where it's like Tortorella. It's
No,
like,
I mean,
yeah,
I understand
2 rounds
that.
out.
But Tortorella-
Crazy.
Yeah, but
I mean,
I would
nuts.
take him as my coach
Tortorella
because he
is
would stand up
crazy.
for me.
No. As much as I love Tortorella and watching his post-game interviews because they're entertaining
Oh, they're
more
great.
than anything in the league.
You don't want that
But
guy behind the bench.
I'm so fed up with anytime you don't win the cup within 5 years, we're going to change out the whole coaching staff, or we're going to fire the head coach and bring up an assistant coach, or we're going to fire the coach and bring up, an interim coach from the minors. Your Pittsburgh fans are notorious for calling for that, and you've done it once or twice now, and other teams have done it a few times. I mean, Tortorella takes a team to second round conference finals for the last 4 years, and he gets fired. Yes, I know he's, not a nice guy, but still, and the players are calling for it. But, I mean, Bilesma, what'd you guys do last year? First round?
Yeah, first round and
Okay,
out
first
with,
round. Still made the
Yeah.
playoffs. First round before that. Won the cup before that with Bilesma halfway.
Up 2 years.
Yeah. First round.
It was Cup, lost in the second round to Montreal, lost in the
First to Philly.
first to Tampa,
then
then Philly.
Yep, that's right.
And then this year. Conference final to Boston.
And Therrien was fired in 2009,
So
right?
still not a bad record.
To play devil's advocate, though, you have the 2 best players in the entire league. The face of the league is on your franchise for the next how many years?
At least 8.
You have Iginla, Neal, Letang, Malkin.
Oh, loaded.
Just loaded to the gills.
Still comes with me of you can't buy a cup.
Right.
I don't care who you are.
You can't
This
buy
isn't
heart.
baseball. This isn't
Heart.
baseball. You can't buy a cup and you can't buy chemistry.
We're not the Yankees here, right?
No, well, yeah.
And you know what? I feel it was the right move. It was done to calm everyone down. It's just because with so many years of aspirations, so many years of we're cup favorite every year, especially this year when you had so many players that to get even if they would have lost like 4-2, gone to Game 7, would have been different. But because they got swept, that's why it's like, okay, well, we need an immediate action. Scoring 2 goals in a whole series when you're averaging 4 a game. In the other series, there was a problem. And you know what? I give John might yell at me later, but I give kudos to Boston. I wasn't happy about it, but they played an excellent game. Rask was on his head for a lot of that series. And it wasn't even goaltending. It was Game 2, you could throw out goaltending. That 6-1 loss, whatever.
Baranowski's going to have your head for that.
But here let me throw this at you. You get, if correct me if I'm wrong, you get eliminated last season in one of the most ridiculous playoff series,
like third highest scoring in history.
In the history of the league. You enter the year with the same goaltending that doesn't exist in the playoffs, and you're going to continue with that next season. How do you justify that as a fan?
As a fan, you can't. I guess there's the owners and the coaches are seeing something that Fleury can possibly have. I mean, when they went to the cup in 08-09, he was 13-4, 13-5 in the playoffs, or something like that.
Right, but you had a coaching change that year too that just kind of changed the entire system.
So when I was thinking about the other day, I'm sitting there and the year they won the cup, it was Therrien's team. Yes, he got fired, and they brought Bilesma. Bilesma brought that extra piece that needed to push them over, and that's what happened. They got to the Cup Finals again. They got the Cup. Ever since then, defense has always been kind of a problem, and maybe player discipline. Mm-hmm. So, with Letang, I have a really bad feeling. I don't think Letang's coming back next year.
Well.
They can't afford to bring him
can't.
back.
I think that's the thing. They won't be able to afford him.
Someone will pay him $6 million a season.
Oh, yeah. Someone will pay him. He'll have to take a hometown discount.
Yeah, probably.
He'll have to take a hometown discount to stay in Pittsburgh.
That's the only way to do it.
We have such a great defensive core coming up. But I think, and the problem is Letang was such a piece of our power play. It's hard to miss him next year. But he also kind of stunk a lot during the Boston series. He really played bad. Paul Martin, I think they
Paul
came
Martin
out.
will not fill that void.
They also said he played with a significant injury. They said.
Everybody, I hate that.
Oh, Crosby had a
here
broken
we
foot
go.
back in the 2008 Stanley Cup.
Something like that.
I was missing an eyeball.
Yeah.
I'm just they're just bringing all these excuses out, and I mean they'll be favorites next year again.
Of course.
As Shiro said, Fleury is a 40-win goaltender during the season. They just have to correct him and how to play in the playoffs. But then part of the problem was it wasn't him all the time in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He did have bad goals, but the defense didn't play well either. I think if we could get Scuderi come back, I mean when Hal Gill was a free agent, I think last year, people were begging him to come back just because he was a tall, physical presence to be back on that line.
Are you saying Mark Eaton is not the answer to this?
He was filling out his retirement papers before Pittsburgh said, "Hey, do you want to play?"
There you have it.
Hey, they played well with him. He was a great fit, but then he didn't play all the time during the playoffs. We need someone more like we got Murray. I liked Murray pickup. He was a big, strong. People were calling him the refrigerator out there. You ran into him, you fell back down.
All right, well, we're going to try to wrap this thing up here.
I'm not done.
Oh, you're
We're
not
gonna
done.
keep going.
Oh, you're going to keep going. Well, the dog is in the house, and we are in the middle of Game 2 in the Stanley Cup Finals, but we're going to truck on here as that one's just back underway. But go ahead, Shrimps. What did you have to finish out on that thought?
Nothing.
You said you weren't done.
No, we're not done with this podcast.
Oh, we're
There's
not
still
done
things
with this
to
podcast.
talk about.
Well, yeah, of course there are. We still got to talk about the series at hand, and who do we think is going to win it? And also, we're not going to go into the fact that they just did the NHL awards yesterday before today,
Half
and
of
then
them.
half of them yesterday, half of them today, and everybody accepted them on the phone. We'll talk about that later in a different podcast. That was just absolutely absurd. I was actually upset and throwing things at the TV. I didn't need I may need a new TV. Boy,
It's always a good excuse.
Exactly. Boy, the bourbon's hitting here. Okay, yeah, it is. So quickly, we're gonna try to round things out here. Can we do that, sir? Because the ladies out in the living room are getting a little anxious. She did bring my wig, and I think that's a sign to get the heck out here. So, all right. Pittsburgh, what do they got to change for next year to make it happen? I mean, obviously it's not going to be coaching and it's not going to be goaltending. And your restricted and unrestricted free agency, well, you kind of know what's coming. It's Brendan Morrow and Jerome McGinley at the top. And then do you really want to keep Cookie? Pascal Dupuis you might want to keep. Craig Adams.
Craig Adams is a playoff person, but not during the year. So, I mean, someone might pick him up, but... And Ginla said he wants to stay. He'll probably take a pay cut if he wants to stay.
He's gonna have to.
How cheap can you get Morrow?
I don't think you. I mean, Murrow did bring something to the table, but I think someone else can bring the same thing to it. Someone younger, someone cheaper.
Former captain though.
I know, but you have a captain, and if again, let's say you have two captains. I mean, we need some people that the focus should be on defense. And it's sad to say, but yeah, it needs to be. Yeah, during the Islanders series, they were outscoring them, so it wasn't a problem. Ottawa, they kind of just beat up.
Yeah.
But Boston...
I actually thought Ottawa was going to give you a harder time than they did. But
I thought so, too. That's why I thought with them, because they were second-best defense in the league, that we would have a good chance with Boston, and I was proven wrong.
Carlson was not hurt, but,
They really need to fix the focus and make it. They need to get back to basics, get the defense fixed, play better from Fleury. And we have a new goaltending coach, the goaltending coach or advisor, however you want to phrase it, consultant. Sorry, goaltender consultant is leaving, and if we can get someone new in there that can get him, because Fleury's still young. I mean, 28 is not that young, but he's still a young goaltender. He can change some things.
I don't know. I think it's either Sugar.
I have no idea who Gillies Maloch is, but he's stepping down, and it looks like, he's whoever he was. He's not a goaltender that I've ever heard of.
Who's replacing him?
It doesn't say anything about that.
They'll probably hire someone in the Austin. They got that, but that might be a focus for the owners to find a good goaltending consultant to get him to that level. If not, I think Fleury's gone next year.
All right.
Because they just signed that player from, I forget, he played in the Frozen Four.
Yeah,
we
we
keep
talked
talking
about this
that
the last time.
We have him coming up. There's a couple of people in Wilkes-Barre. They've been playing decent.
Thomas Falcone.
We do have Thomas next year again. And actually, the talk was if Fleury left this year, that Vokoun would have been the number 1 next year. I don't think he can do a full season. Yeah. I think the shortened season helped him. He played well this year. The Boston series was not his fault. He played well. He did what he needed to do. The offense did not. The coaching needs to change some ideas. I mean, they had Ginla on the opposite wing compared to the wing that he played his whole career. They did that during the Islanders series. They switched him back, and he did grow well. And then Ottawa, they switched him back to where he was. Yeah. I forget, is he a left winger by? Is it?
Ginla's a right winger by.
Yeah.
By Hart. So they had him on the left wing then with Neal on the right. And the whole purpose of bringing him was him playing Crosby. And when he had those lines together, they scored points. Yeah. And they didn't. They put him back on Malkin.
I know. We're going to move on here in a second, but Eric Hartzell was the name of the goaltender. Yeah, he's up and coming. But all right, let's move on. Let's talk about the series at hand. We're going to move on to Dave. We're going to pass Dave the mic here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for getting me off the hot seat.
Yeah, well, we have plenty of time to come back to the Pittsburgh Penguins in the offseason. Yeah. But
he was sweating it.
Yeah, let's talk about some Toronto Maple Leafs hockey here with Dave Moran.
I do live 2 hours. I did used to live 2 hours from Toronto.
Yeah, well, get back over into the Stanley Cup if you want. We're going to finish out here on our overall thoughts. Dave, Chicago and Boston here in the Stanley Cup Finals. Schrems is always high on the depth of Boston, and I kind of like the grit and the depth of Chicago, and I didn't really see them making it past L.A., and somehow they surprised the both of us. Chicago. Do you think they're going to pull this one out as a sweep? Because it looks like they certainly have the muster to do it.
At the rate we're going, sure. Could I see a sweep? Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to commit to a sweep just because anything can happen. I mean, Boston can sort of recapture the game. Right now, they're on their heels, and Chicago's getting it done. I mean, Boston is a strong team. They're a balanced team, and no one can argue that. What's maybe keeping this from a blowout is Rask's goaltending. He's been solid, you could say, all season long, and definitely throughout the playoffs. He's gotten them through the he definitely was a factor in their prior series. So, yeah, Chicago, I really think they will just full steam ahead, keep on churning. And, I mean, at this rate, as it stands right now, Boston might squeak out a game or two, probably at home. But the way things are going now, Chicago's just going to wrap it up.
So, any surprises here in this series so far? I mean, we talked earlier here that it was 3-1 Boston in that third period, and then all of a sudden Chicago just exploding out of nowhere and just surprising everybody, forcing a triple overtime game, the fifth longest Stanley Cup overtime game in history here. What do you think? I mean, with the outcome of this game, right now it is 1-0 Chicago. Where do you think this one goes going into the second period here?
Well, I think the deciding factor, I mean, if you look at game one, Saad opened the scoring, and if I recall, he was on a line with Shaw and I'm forgetting who else is
maybe
on.
Bickle?
Bickle.
I think Bickle was on that line, yeah. You know, Saad opened up the scoring, and then Shaw wrapped it up, and I think that line again, from what we've seen, I think they've been putting a fair amount of pressure on, just as you would get out of, say, Taves and Kane and Hossa. So I think that will be your swing, your X factor, so to speak. If that line can produce just a goal here and there, or even just consistent pressure, I think that'll be what's the nail in the coffin for Boston, because they got all they can handle with the like I said, Taves, Kane, and Hossa.
So is Ray Emery finally going to get his name etched on the Stanley Cup?
He didn't get one in Anaheim.
Oh, he did get one in. No, I don't think he did.
Are you sure?
Jiggy was the goalie then. I don't know if Ray Emery was backing him up. I think he was with Ottawa at the time.
Are you sure?
I think you're getting confused with the Golden Gloves he won.
You're going to make me look things up. Well, yeah. Do you really think we're going to see Emery at all? I mean, is Crawford just going to hold his own? Because that was all it was the other night. It was a goaltending battle. Everybody on Twitter was just lighting it up, saying, oh, my God, Tuukka Rask, he should get the MVP, Conn Smythe, yada, yada. But then he just kind of imploded. It was all high glove side, as Rob spoke to earlier. I mean, is Tuukka Rask really that great in the Stanley Cup Finals? Is he really... I mean, at that level. I mean, Corey Crawford isn't even tested to this level yet. These are two goaltenders that are new to the Stanley Cup Final dance.
You got a short body of work to look at, though.
Yeah.
you really can't say for sure. I mean, they're both young. I don't know how really old Crawford is, but as far as I know, he's a younger goaltender, and only being 2 games in now in the Cup Finals, it's hard to determine what their caliber is at this point because it's too early for me. I don't know, Shrems, maybe you think it's different, but
I'm correct about Emery, by the way.
What's that?
I'm correct about Emery.
If any,
he was on Ottawa.
Sidebar. If anything, though, I mean, these goalies have nothing to go in any direction but up from here.
Sure.
Rask and Crawford, both youngsters. It wasn't Crawford who got the last cup; it was Niemi who got the cup, and they got traded away.
Yep.
So this is Crawford's first cup. This is Rask's first time playing. I don't think he got a shot with them a couple of years ago. I think Thomas took them all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to figure these guys are both amateurs when it comes to that. When it comes to that playing field, look who's already out.
Right.
Quick is already out. He has already had cup experience. Fleury has already had cup experience.
Yep. Chicago doesn't have depth at the goaltending position anymore, so it's not like they can afford to trade away Crawford.
No, they do.
Ray
Yes.
Emery at number 2 is our next up and coming goaltender because he's not. He's washed out.
No, actually, Chicago just signed a guy this past week from Finland.
I'm a little
huge
slow on the
prospect. Huge prospect.
Okay.
Like Crawford's not going anywhere. We know that.
Is it as huge of a
But
prospect
still-
as Toronto made Gustafsson to look to be?
No, this is quiet.
But you can't say prospect is actually necessarily depth.
Yeah, that's true.
He's as of right now, he's going to be in their system somewhere.
Mhm.
Okay.
But let's call him Antti-Niemi quiet. Nobody knew
Okay.
about Niemi until he actually won the cup. This guy is going to be of similar caliber. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Tuomo something. Antti Retina or something like that.
Retina.
I kid you not. That's what his name's going to be. They're going to be fine. Crawford, as much as I don't believe he's a cup caliber goaltender, he'll get one this year. I'm not.
So then, Shrimps, let me ask you, what was it, do you think, that got them to this point?
Chemistry.
What's Chicago's bread and butter?
Offensive chemistry. Defensive chemistry as well. I mean, they have what it takes.
Their roster is it's a stud roster.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and it's not going to be. You have that Kane Taves combo, much like Zetterberg Datsuk.
Yeah, but you got Pat Sharp there too.
You have Sharp there
I
too.
forgot about
you
Sharp.
got Hossa too. You got a
Hossa,
couple of young guys in there.
But their third line is the one that's putting the
That's
biscuit
what I'm
in the
saying.
basket.
That's the
just
X
it.
factor, is that third
the
line.
killer. Yep.
And that's what's going to win you a cup. I mean,
Yeah,
if your top 2 lines can't get it done, and your third line is scoring all the points and winning those games, you're unstoppable. It's as plain as that.
Antti-Raanta.
Rodna. That's
Rodna.
right.
Raanta.
He was highly touted. I did a little research on him.
Raanta. I'm sorry.
Ranta. So I mean, he is Antti-Niemi. He is that good goaltender that if you put him on a good team, he's going to play well, and he's on a good team.
Well, if Crawford wins
So
the
then
cup,
let's go a step globally
Who scored?
before we do another.
Who scored?
Nobody's. Somebody scored a goal, and we all got to do it.
Boston.
Before
yeah.
let's
out
play
there in a
devil's advocate and let's dig a little further with that. So Niemi is now with San Jose. San Jose has been a perennial playoff contender
second round and out. Yeah.
for a number of years. So now
Somebody's choking in
they
the room.
have a good goaltender. They do have some scoring. I really can't speak to their defense. So what is San Jose's problem? Why can't they make it to the next level?
I think you've already said it. It's defense,
Coaching.
and coaching.
Mhm.
Yeah. See, the thing is, what's his face? McClellan. He's a solid coach. I mean, But the thing is, he doesn't know how to push his team to the next level. I mean, he's got solid offensive players. The talent there is just great. I mean, you can name some players. Patrick
Pavelski,
Marleau,
Thornton,
Pavelski,
Marleau.
Yeah,
Everybody's there.
you can go down the list with these guys. But then when you think about it, it's like, all right, defense and the goaltending, they've been really kind of hanging on to Niemi, thinking he's like, the savior.
Even before that,
he can walk
Nabokov.
on water. And Nabokov was their big thing. But those were more towards the days when Ron Wilson was there. And
Wilson's a good coach.
He's a good coach, but I don't think he's an
beef with
East
Wilson.
Coast kind of guy. So that's when, obviously Toronto firing him spoke volumes about that. And he also brought over Vesa Toskala from San Jose, and that experiment absolutely sucked.
Mm-hmm.
So Now, what do you do? McClellan's over there now. Niemi's still in net. They brought him over from Chicago thinking that he was the final piece of that puzzle. Their defense, yeah, sure. Dan Boyle's going to take you how far now? I mean, is it Dan Boyle?
Yeah, no, it's Dan Boyle.
Brent
Burns is jumping up into offense, though. He's playing left wing now,
right,
as well as defense.
You don't have consistency on the blue line, and it's not helping the cause.
So the D is the question mark, is what you're saying.
So
now,
question mark.
let's throw it back.
Yeah.
Let's throw it back now. So there is a problem with San Jose. Their question mark is their defense. So now, again, I know it's early on, but you could say that Chicago's question mark is their goaltending.
Right.
We can agree on that. So now, how is it they have one component that is, we'll say, weak, for lack of a better term? How is it that they can move on, yet San Jose...
They got Taves and Kane.
Does not.
Well, here's the deal. When Antti Niemi was there, he was not a Vezina caliber goaltender.
No,
he
wasn't.
was a good goaltender playing in a great system. Yeah. Crawford is a good goaltender playing in a great system.
Yeah. And that was at the beginning of the Joel Quenneville system. That was like, 2 years deep into it. I mean, it wasn't very long into it either.
It's a matter of what you have up front. And it's the same thing in Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's starting to get exposed. Yeah. You have great offense, but your goaltending is not what it should be. And if you want a well-rounded team, you have to go out and get good goaltending.
So then couldn't you say it's the system in Pittsburgh? And wouldn't the system come from the coach? Then isn't the problem starting with the coach?
Well, because, Michel Therrien, I thought, was a great coach that fit for Pittsburgh. And now look what he did in Montreal. Montreal, they went from 15th all the way through until what did they finish at 6? I mean, they did a fantastic job of coming back. And they made a coaching change, and also the GM change too with Bergvin. I can't even pronounce his name correctly right now. It must be the beverages I've been drinking this evening. But I mean, he was nominated for GM of the year. So that GM and coach tandem may be the puzzle pieces that you need to put together the right team. Montreal, they didn't change much in their roster. No. I mean, for crying out loud, they got rid of Eric Cole and they brought back Michael Ryder.
I don't like either player.
Exactly. So those were not what you absolutely needed to make the playoffs. Granted, it was a 48-game season. That's the only asterisk I'm going to put on everything we've talked about in all of these podcasts is it's a 48-game season.
But
how deep can you go in just 48 games versus 82?
I'm going to interject real quick and then I'll stop. If you take what we have now, Bruins, Blackhawks, if you add in the rest of the season, you'll still see these two teams in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Yes. It's not like it's Islanders, Coyotes here. It's not like some bizarro, completely off the hook Stanley Cup final.
Boy, those Blue Jackets really had a chance.
You had two teams here that are more than capable of carrying themselves in a full season as opposed to a half season.
Okay. All right. Well said.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. It's you can't really say the product is any different than what you're getting if it was a full season. So
okay,
yeah.
Well, then again, we saw what LA did last year and had a last-second comeback, and then all of a sudden win the cup. But I mean, those are those historic flukes.
Opportunities are opportunities, whether you capitalize them or not.
Somebody in here predicted LA to win the cup in July.
Yeah, and you got some money for it.
Can't remember who. Somebody in this room.
We already said it.
Oh, apparently I'm richer. I didn't know. Thank you.
Congrats. Check under your bed. All right. Well, we're going to cut it off here. We got plenty of hockey to watch here tonight, and we also have some other festivities to get to. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And Rob and Phil have left the room. If you couldn't tell that those were their voices, I didn't properly introduce them, by the way. But if you were listening to the last podcast, you knew who they were. But Dave Moran, thank you. Brian Schrems, as always, my partner here. Have a good night, everybody, and enjoy Game 2 and Game 3 and 4. We'll catch up real soon. Don't stop believing.